We are joined now by Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Scott, how are you this morning?
Not too bad. How's it going today?
Good. Doc, how you been, man? I feel like I used to always run into you somewhere by now, man. Are we going to have to wait till Iowa City on Friday?
It might be. I don't know. I'm all over the place these days. I was in Chicago last week. I'll be in Nashville here tomorrow for the Big Ten SEC Summit, and then I was in Columbus over the weekend. So I'm traveling like crazy.
Hey, before we get to the big matchup in Iowa specifically with this summit, at what point could you see some uniformity, or would you expect to see any uniformity between these two conferences?
I would expect there to be some sort of agreements or some sort of, some combination of things to happen as soon as this week when it comes to certain areas of cooperation. Among them would be scheduling. I think that there's going to try to be some sort of a agreement, and not necessarily written that you will play X, but let's play each other as often as possible, and maybe try to get some games on the docket. But then one of the things I wrote about today when I talked to Ohio State athletic director Ross Bjork is, some of the MTEs for basketball is something that they feel like that they can make a lot more money on than just paying it, which is what they do now. Everybody seems to pay $100,000 to go play in the Cayman Islands over Thanksgiving. Well, nobody makes any money doing that. Now it's like, well, why not put a game together in Nashville and invite two Big Ten teams and two SEC teams to call it a classic, play on the weekend, and voila. So I expect there to be some sort of agreements there, and some of the other issues, where they can start really working together, playoff and what have you.
You think the SEC will ever add a conference game in football?
There seems to be a desire that will be the case. It's kind of been paralyzed a little bit by the schools that are hoping to get to bowl eligibility, because they know that if they add another SEC game, that really hurts their opportunity to do that. But I think one of the things that I know from talking to the Big Ten ADs, and I know the SEC counterparts feel the same way, is let's reimagine the postseason. Let's reimagine everything, which is, you have to be 6-6 to go to a bowl game? I mean, that's been the standard for a long time, that you'd have a winning record or at least be 6-6. But if it means that the SEC will have a ninth league game, and if you're Kentucky or Mississippi State or another team that struggles from time to time to get to a bowl game, but you can win 5 games, hey, does that, will that get you to a bowl game? Because I think the conferences have figured out that they're bigger than the bowl system.
Yeah.
And now they have an opportunity to do that.
Scott, speaking of the conferences figuring out they might be bigger than the whole system, there's kind of, or at least being reported by Ross Dellinger, there's kind of this undercurrent to these meetings in Nashville of not just kind of an arrangement that might be agreed to between the Big Ten and the SEC, but that Disney is trying to talk about an entirely new landscape and I guess the format for the entire sport of college football with kind of a 70-team super league. How much have you heard about that? Is that something that's even on your radar at this point?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've written about that. That's something that's been in place for a long time. The one thing is that in order to do that, you basically surrender your autonomy as the SEC and the Big Ten, two biggest brands in college sports. The Big Ten's been in existence since 1896, the SEC since 1933. And in order to go to some sort of outsourced college football league like that, where you have some relegation and districts or what have you, the Big Ten and SEC have to say, okay, you're in charge and we're not. Mm-hmm. I don't ever see them doing that unless this judgment, which yesterday came back, with preliminary approval, unless there's something that causes them to go to bankruptcy. I do not in any way, shape, or form anticipate them agreeing to that, because if you're the SEC and the Big Ten, why would you do that? Why would you surrender what your power to another source just to and then you've got to also consider the brands in those leagues consider themselves superior to their peers in other leagues. and instead you would actually elevate them to your level. I just don't ever see that happening unless there's bankruptcy involved.
Talking all things college football with our main man, Scott Dochterman. Doc, let's get to the matchup in the season as we sit. I think quietly, and I said this yesterday, this seems like a big game for Iowa. Not to say that Washington is playing with house money, because they clearly aren't. But it seems like the pressure is squarely on Iowa. Fact or fiction? And if so, how did we get to this point at this juncture of the season?
The pressure is clearly on Iowa if it wants to reach its goals. And right now, I mean, those goals are on life support. I mean, they would have to win out to be a college football playoff team. We can see that. Even then, that may not be enough. But by losing to Iowa State, they lost their mulligan. They lost the cartilage in the knee. It's gone, and because everybody expected them to lose to Ohio State, and they did. But the Iowa State loss now puts them in a position to where if they want to be a college football playoff team, and they brought all those people back, that they have to win out. And then when you look at Washington and the way it's playing, last year they go to the national title game, then they lose 21 out of 22 starters, their head coach. And now you look at them and they're playing really well, and they beat Michigan. And so, this is a really important game for the Hawkeyes and for the Huskies, I would say, too, but specifically to Iowa, because they haven't put together a full game yet. They played really well at certain times, and then they played, poorly or mediocrely for quite a bit, too. So they need to get on the right track. This is game 6. They need to look the part, but also they're playing against an opponent that I think people are probably surprised or is playing as well as it is. So they do need to take a step forward. Otherwise, if they were to lose this game and they're 3-3, then the Sharks will be swirling here in Iowa City.
Yeah, see, that's interesting. Still a top 25 defense, and listen to Coach Parker's presser last week. He was ready statistically for you guys, for those that didn't think they were playing as good of defense. But the Shark comment has me thinking it's just like, okay, at 3-3 with the schedule talk, is that kind of where this is coming from? Assuming that Iowa kind of had this clear path, and you could potentially wake up, Sunday morning and be 3-3, or is it more the stats that we saw recently with the AP top 25 and the margin of victory, or excuse me, the margin of defeat and consecutive? Like, what's going on that's got it to this point?
The fan base is just kind of in a surly state, and it has been for a while, primarily because of the offense. The defense has been fantastic for a long time, but I don't know. This is a fan base that sometimes doesn't. It jumps to conclusions very quickly, and it gets. I thought this weekend was a little embarrassing, frankly, when they're calling for everybody to be fired and everything, and I'm like, come on, Ohio State is clearly a tier above Iowa. It's not even close, and the game wasn't close either. Iowa's defense put forth some pretty good effort, had a couple of turnovers in the first half, but one team hopes to get to the playoff, the other team wants to win a national title. It's really that clear, and yet it's just, I don't know if it's the lack of reaching a pinnacle and feeling satisfied or happy with the outcome or what, or getting, part of it is their last 8 games against ranked opponents. They're 0-8. And they've been outscored, the average of what, I think it's like 39-10 or something like that. So it's really, that part of it is just getting blown out by really good teams. I think it's something that's hard for some people to digest.
Scott, do you think at all watching Michigan play a very similar style to what Iowa's been doing and then not be able to get to that next level, do you think that's added to the frustration for Iowa fans at all?
I guess it's – I think what it is there is 85% of Iowa's program is in great shape, not just healthy, but great shape. You look at the way the defense is played, the way that they respond to adversity, the lack of attrition, the building of success, 3 stars and fundamentals, all that stuff is great at Iowa. But then the detriments are so obvious that those are the first things people can see, which is quarterback and passing game. And you're like, why can't you go out and get somebody that's average? Not even just good, just average. And you see that, like last year they were shut out 3 times, which they hadn't had happen in a season in, more than 50 years. And it's just, I think those are the things that people glom onto, and it's understandable. And that's what keeps them, they won 10 games last year, but they were like a fist fighter with only one arm. It was just, the offense was dreadful. You couldn't get past it.
What do you expect this weekend?
I expect a really close competitive game that goes all the way to the end. I think Iowa's got a chance. It's going to be it's first game at Kinnick for a while. I expect it to be a madhouse. And, there are going to be some really quality, plays, I think, by the Hawkeyes early. And I think Washington will keep coming at them. And I think this is a game that you could see going down in the last couple of minutes of the fourth quarter, one way or the other. So I would expect it to be one of the more entertaining games of the day.
Nice.
That's Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Scott, we appreciate the time as always. We'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, Doc.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.